May 16, 1940. 11:47 a.m. The Reich Chancellery, Berlin. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring crushed his cigar into the marble ashtray and laughed, not a polite chuckle, a belly laugh that echoed through the conference room where 12 Nazi ministers sat around mahogany furniture looted from France. On the table lay a decoded intelligence report. President Roosevelt had just announced America would produce 50 Zu-30 aircraft per year for the war effort. 50,000 planes. Göring's jowls shook as he read aloud. The Americans can barely make a decent automobile without it falling apart. Now they think they'll build an air force. He looked around the room, his Luftwaffe uniform medals clinking. Gentlemen, this is not strategy. This is Hollywood fantasy. Before we continue with Göring's fatal miscalculation, we need your help to keep these forgotten stories of industrial warfare alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Did your grandfather work in a wartime factory? Do you have a connection to this industrial miracle? We want to hear from you. Now back to Berlin, May 1940, where Hermann Göring was about to make the most expensive miscalculation in military history. The ministers joined his laughter. Why wouldn't they? Germany's entire aviation industry, the most advanced in Europe, produced 15,000 aircraft annually. Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, Heinkel, Junkers, the finest engineering minds in the world. The Luftwaffe had crushed Poland in weeks, was currently devastating France, and had air superiority over every battlefield. America. America made refrigerators, toasters, cheap radios. Ford made cars on assembly lines, sure, but aircraft required precision, craftsmanship. You couldn't stamp out a fighter plane like a Model T. Propaganda, Minister of Armaments Fritz Todt declared, sipping schnapps. Roosevelt is trying to scare us before America even enters the war. 50,000 aircraft. It's mathematically impossible. Göring nodded, his face flushed with confidence. I've visited American factories. I've seen their capabilities. He had toured Ford plants in the 1920s, had even met Henry Ford personally. They have capacity for mass production, yes, for simple things. But combat aircraft, each plane requires 40 Zu-30 individual parts manufactured to tolerances smaller than a human hair. The Americans don't have the skilled workforce. They don't have the organizational discipline. They certainly don't have German engineering excellence. He stamped his approval on the intelligence report with a red dismissed seal. If the Americans produce even 25 Zu-30 planes next year, Göring announced, I'll eat my Knight's Cross. Nobody in that room understood what was already happening 4 Zu-30 miles away. The warning signs were there. Göring's intelligence officers just couldn't see them. William Knudsen was a Danish immigrant who stood 6'3", with hands scarred from decades of factory work. He'd started as a machinist, worked his way to president of General Motors, and understood production like Göring understood aerial combat. In May 1940, Roosevelt appointed him to lead America's industrial mobilization. Knudsen didn't see 50 Zu-30 aircraft as fantasy. He saw an engineering problem with a clear solution. The issue wasn't capability, it was mindset. European aircraft manufacturers operated like medieval guilds. Master craftsmen hand-fitted each component. A single Messerschmitt Bf-109 required 12 Zu-30 man-hours of labor. Skilled workers carefully assembled engines, welded fuselages, hand-riveted aluminum panels. Quality control meant experienced eyes examining every joint. Production moved at the pace of human skill. Beautiful, precise, completely inadequate for total war. Knudsen had a different vision. He'd spent 20 years perfecting automotive assembly lines. He understood something the Germans didn't. Complexity could be broken into simple, repeatable steps. You didn't need 12,000 hours of skilled labor. You needed standardization, interchangeable parts, and workers trained for single tasks they could perform quickly. The problem wasn't the planes. The problem was thinking about planes the wrong way. Between May 1940 and December 1941, Knudsen quietly visited 127 factories across America. He met with engineers from Boeing, Douglas, Lockheed, Consolidated. He brought automotive executives to aircraft plants. He asked one question everywhere: how do we make this faster? The answers were always the same: can't be done. Aircraft are too complex, each model is different. You need craftsmen, not assembly line workers. Knudsen's reply never changed. Ford makes a V8 engine with 95 separate parts every 81 seconds. Why can't we make a wing assembly in an hour? Most engineers laughed. One didn't. Charles Sorensen ran Ford's production operations. He was 59 years old, born in Copenhagen, and had personally designed the Highland Park assembly line that revolutionized automotive manufacturing. Roosevelt and Knudsen approached him in January 1941 with blueprints for the B-24 Liberator bomber. The military wants 500 of these, Knudsen explained. Consolidated aircraft can make maybe 3 per week. We need more. Sorensen studied the blueprints for 4 hours at his kitchen table in Dearborn, Michigan. His wife brought coffee. He didn't touch it. This isn't 3 different problems, Sorensen finally said, tapping the wing assembly drawing. This is 300 small problems. Every bolt, every rivet, every hydraulic line. Break it down far enough and you're just stamping metal and joining parts. He looked up at Knudsen. I can build one of these every hour. Knudsen didn't laugh. Show me. February 1941, Willow Run, Michigan, a field of soybeans 25 miles west of Detroit. Sorensen stood in freezing rain, watching bulldozers clear land. The architect's plans showed a building that would be, upon completion, the largest room under one roof in the world. 1 mile long, 1/4 mile wide. 5 million square feet of factory floor. People called it Sorensen's folly. Even Ford executives questioned the cost, $67 million for a single factory. To build a plane Ford had never manufactured before. You're building a factory before you know how to build the plane, Henry Ford's son Edsel pointed out. Sorensen nodded. By the time we figure out the plane, we'll need the factory ready. Construction crews worked in 3 shifts, 24 hours daily. While the building rose, Sorensen's team disassembled a B-24 bomber into its fundamental components. Not just the major sections, wings, fuselage, tail, everything, every single part. 531 individual components. Sorensen's team photographed each piece, measured it, timed how long it took to install. Then they asked, how do we make this simpler? Could this part be stamped instead of forged? Could 3 components be combined into one? Could the assembly angle be changed so an inexperienced worker could do it? The military resisted every change. Aircraft tradition demanded hand-fitted precision. Tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. Experienced craftsmen with decades of training. Sorensen ignored them. He redesigned 450 components. He created jigs and fixtures so parts could only fit one way. He developed specialized tools that required 1 hour of training instead of 1 year. He broke the bomber assembly into 77 separate workstations, each performing a specific task. We're not building bombers, Sorensen told his engineers. We're building a machine that builds bombers. By September 1942, Willow Run was complete. The assembly line stretched the entire mile length of the building. Raw aluminum entered at one end. Completed B-24 Liberators rolled out the other end. The first plane took 40 1,000 man-hours, exactly like Consolidated's factory. Sorensen wasn't satisfied. His team identified bottlenecks. They repositioned workstations. They timed every movement. They discovered that workers spent 6 minutes walking to retrieve tools, so they moved tools closer. They found that mechanics wasted time flipping through maintenance manuals, so they created picture-based instruction cards anyone could follow. The second bomber took 38 hours. The 10th took 18 hours. By March 1943, Willow Run produced 1 complete B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes, not every hour, every 63 minutes. The workforce wasn't master craftsmen. It was farmers' daughters from Indiana, grandfathers from Ohio, women who'd never seen an airplane before, black workers from the South migrating north for war jobs. They worked from picture cards, following steps, installing components into pre-aligned jigs. One young woman from Kentucky, Sarah Mitchell, age 19, installed tail stabilizers. Just tail stabilizers. She could complete her task in 37 minutes. She didn't know how to fly a plane. She didn't need to. She knew how to read the picture card, lift the stabilizer assembly with the overhead crane, align the mounting holes, and install 24 bolts to exact torque specifications. Sarah installed tail stabilizers on 4 200 bombers. Each one flew, each one fought, each one returned crews safely home. She made $1.05 per hour. She saved her brother's life in the Pacific Theater, though she never knew which B-24 carried him. That was the revolution Göring couldn't understand. American industrial might wasn't about individual genius. It was about system design, about breaking complexity into simplicity and scaling it infinitely. But Willow Run was just the beginning. Across America, the transformation was total. Boeing's Seattle plant assembled B-17 Flying Fortresses in a facility that stretched across 75 acres. Lockheed's Burbank factory produced P-38 Lightning fighters in a building so large it had its own internal weather. Rain sometimes fell inside on humid days. Douglas Aircraft operated 42 separate facilities. North American Aviation built P-51 Mustangs in 5 different states simultaneously. The scale was incomprehensible. General Motors converted 47 automotive plants to aircraft production. They manufactured Grumman Wildcats, Grumman Avengers, and FM2 variants. Workers who assembled Chevrolet engines in 1940 were riveting fighter fuselages in 1941. The transition took 6 weeks. Chrysler's Detroit Tank Arsenal facility covered 113 acres. They produced M4 Sherman tanks and aircraft engines. The smell of aviation oil and hot metal filled the air 24 hours daily. Smoke from welding torches created artificial fog visible from 3 miles away. Women comprised 40% of the workforce. Rosie the Riveter wasn't propaganda. She was Margaret, a librarian from Iowa installing hydraulic systems. She was Dorothy, a schoolteacher from Georgia, welding aluminum wing sections. She was Ruth, a farmwife from Kansas, painting identification markings on P-47 Thunderbolts. These women worked with precision tools calibrated to tolerances smaller than a human hair. They operated drill presses, pneumatic riveters, hydraulic presses, and overhead cranes. They worked 10-hour shifts, 6 days weekly. They raised children, maintained households, and purchased war bonds. Some died in industrial accidents. 14 women at a Los Angeles plant perished when a wing section collapsed. Their names went unrecorded in military histories. Production resumed the next day. The numbers became staggering. In 1941, America produced 433 aircraft. Nazi intelligence confirmed this, and Göring was unconcerned. Germany produced 776 that year, acceptable ratio. In 1942, America produced 836 aircraft. Germany managed 556. Göring blamed the Eastern Front. Resources were stretched. Temporary setback. In 1943, America produced 898 aircraft. Germany produced 807. Göring stopped laughing. His intelligence reports now arrived daily, typed on thin paper, stamped urgent in red ink. The numbers seemed impossible. American factories were producing 1 fighter every 4 minutes, 1 bomber every hour, 1 training aircraft every 30 minutes. These figures cannot be accurate, Göring insisted to his staff in December 1943. The Americans don't have enough aluminum. They don't have enough skilled workers. They must be counting prototypes or damaged aircraft or trainer planes. His intelligence chief, Josef Kammhuber, laid out reconnaissance photographs on the conference table. Aerial images of Willow Run, of Boeing Seattle, of Douglas Long Beach. The factories were visible from 20 Wowsavern feet. They stretched for miles. Reichsmarschall, Kammhuber said quietly, every photograph is verified by 3 independent sources. The Americans are producing exactly what they claim. Göring studied the images. He could see the parking lot surrounding the factories, thousands of cars, tens of thousands of workers. The assembly lines visible through the roofs in infrared photography, glowing with heat from welding operations. How? Göring demanded. How are they training workers this quickly? Kammhuber had the answer. German intelligence had captured instruction manuals from shot-down B-24s. The manuals contained picture-based instructions. Step 1. Insert bolt through hole A. Step 2. Apply washer. Step 3. Tighten to 45 foot-pounds torque. No engineering degree required. They've reduced aircraft assembly to the level of assembling furniture, Kammhuber explained. Any worker can do it with minimal training. This was the philosophical divide Göring couldn't cross. German military tradition valued individual craftsmanship. A Messerschmitt mechanic trained for 3 years before he touched a fighter. Pride in workmanship, precision, the German way. The American way was different. Not better craftsmanship, better systems. One Bf-109 required 12,000 man-hours. One P-51 Mustang required 5,800 man-hours and performed better. Not because American engineers were superior, because American production design eliminated unnecessary complexity. The P-51 had 40% fewer parts than the Bf-109. Not because it was simpler, because engineers designed it for mass production from the beginning. Every component was standardized, interchangeable, easy to replace. When a Bf-109 needed a new engine, mechanics spent 18 hours carefully fitting and calibrating. When a P-51 needed a new engine, mechanics unbolted 6 mounting points and dropped in a replacement in 90 minutes. The new engine was already calibrated at the factory. This was why Sarah Mitchell, a 19-year-old from Kentucky with a high school education, could help build 4 200 bombers. The system made her effective. The design made her precision adequate. The scale made her contribution devastating. January 5, 1944, 8th Air Force Command, England. Colonel Marcus Redfield stood in the briefing room, watching the board update. Today's mission, 750 heavy bombers striking Germany. B-17s and B-24s, escorted by 400 P-47s and P-51s. 1150, he said aloud, unconsciously doing the math. We're sending 450 aircraft in one mission. His adjutant nodded. And we'll do it again tomorrow, sir, and the day after. This was the reality Göring now faced. On some days, American factories produced more aircraft than Germany had in operational service. The Luftwaffe began the war with 4 Zerson combat aircraft. Formidable. By 1944, America was producing 4 Zerson aircraft every 3 weeks. The mathematics became crushing. Germany shot down 2 Zerson American bombers in 1944, devastating losses. 10% of all bombers sent over Europe never returned. American factories replaced them in 6 days and built 1 Zerson additional aircraft. The Luftwaffe destroyed 4,200 American aircraft total in 1944. Fighters, bombers, reconnaissance planes, transports. American industry produced 96, 318 aircraft that year. Germany destroyed 3% of annual production. It wasn't a war. It was a production line feeding itself into Germany until the machine stopped. Göring saw the reports. He understood what was happening. In April 1944, he met with Albert Speer, Reich Minister of Armaments. We're losing the industrial war, Göring admitted, smoking his 5th cigar of the morning. His hand trembled slightly. The Americans aren't fighting us, they're drowning us. Speer nodded. We can't match their production. We don't have the factories. We don't have the workers. We don't have the raw materials. Even if we mobilized every factory in occupied Europe, we couldn't build half what America produces in Michigan alone. This was the strategic nightmare. Germany occupied France, Belgium, Netherlands, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, and parts of the Soviet Union. The entire industrial capacity of conquered Europe couldn't match one American state's output. Ford's Willow Run plant employed 42 Zero workers. It produced 8 645 B-24 bombers during the war. That's one factory, operated by one company, in one state. Douglas Aircraft's Long Beach plant employed 44 Zero workers. Lockheed Burbank, 94 Zero workers. Boeing Seattle, 50 Zero workers. Consolidated San Diego, 45 Zero workers. These 5 factories alone employed 275 Zero people, more than the entire Luftwaffe personnel in 1944. And they were just 5 factories among hundreds. By mid-1944, the statistics became almost satirical. On June 6, 1944 D-Day, Allied aircraft flew 674 sorties over Normandy. The Luftwaffe managed 319 sorties, a ratio of 46-1. German pilots shot down Allied planes. They were skilled, experienced, and brave. They were also mathematically irrelevant. Every Luftwaffe ace could shoot down 10 planes daily and still lose the attrition war. Lieutenant Hans Berger, a Luftwaffe pilot with 21 kills, wrote in his diary on July 12, 1944, "Shot down 2 Thunderbolts this morning. Felt like victory for 5 minutes. Then I saw the formations coming. Hundreds. They just keep coming. We shoot down 5, they send 50. We shoot down 50, they send 500. Where do they all come from?" They came from Willow Run, from Boeing, from Douglas, from Lockheed, from Consolidated, from North American, from Republic, from Grumman, from Vought, from Bell, from Martin. They came from teenagers in Iowa, from mothers in California, from farmers in Kansas, from miners in Pennsylvania, from black workers in Alabama, from Mexican Americans in Texas, from women who'd never worked outside the home. They came from a production system that transformed a nation of consumers into a nation of builders in 18 months. The final tallies destroyed Nazi assumptions. Between 1940 and 1945, the United States produced 159 military aircraft. Germany produced 119 307. America built 5 times more aircraft with 50% less territory and while fighting a 2-ocean war. Break that down by year. 1941. USA 19,433 aircraft Germany, 11,776 aircraft. 1942 USA 47,836 aircraft Germany, 15,556 aircraft. 1943 USA 85,898 aircraft Germany, 24,807 aircraft. 1944 USA 96,318 aircraft Germany, 39,807 aircraft. 1945 January-May USA 45,679 aircraft Germany, 7,544 aircraft. In 1944 alone, 1 year, America produced 96,318 aircraft. That's 264 aircraft every single day. 1 aircraft every 5. 5 minutes, 24 hours daily, 365 days straight. Ford's Willow Run never missed a production day. Christmas, New Year's, Easter, the line ran continuously. Workers rotated in shifts. The smell of aviation fuel and hot aluminum never faded. By May 1945, when Germany surrendered, American factories had bomber production lines stretching for months ahead. Orders were cancelled. Partially completed aircraft were scrapped. Ford delivered its final B-24 on May 31, 1945. The factory shut down in July. 8,645 bombers in 3 years. Charles Sorensen, the man who designed the system, was 63 years old when the last plane rolled off the line. He'd lost 40 pounds during the war from stress and exhaustion. He never received a military medal. He retired to Florida, died in 1968, and his obituary mentioned Ford but not Willow Run. Sarah Mitchell, the Kentucky woman who installed tail stabilizers on 4 200 bombers, returned to her hometown after the war. She married a farmer named Robert Hutchins, had 3 children, and worked as a rural postmaster for 34 years. She died in 1998 at age 76. Her obituary mentioned she worked briefly in Detroit during the war. Her brother, whom she'd saved by building those bombers, attended her funeral. He'd flown 34 missions over Germany in a B-24. He never knew his sister had worked on the same aircraft. They never discussed the war much. That was the American industrial miracle. It wasn't built by famous generals or celebrated heroes. It was built by ordinary people who showed up, learned a task, performed it competently, and went home to raise families. Goering's fundamental miscalculation wasn't underestimating American technology. It was underestimating American willingness to organize labor efficiently. He thought aircraft production required genius. It required management. Hermann Goering spent his final years in various states of denial and addiction to morphine. His body, once massive and imposing, became bloated and weak. During the Nuremberg trials, prosecutors presented the aircraft production statistics. Reichsmarschall Goering, in May 1940, you dismissed President Roosevelt's plan to produce 50 Zu-0 aircraft annually. You called it Hollywood fantasy. Do you remember this? Goering, wearing a plain grey suit instead of his medal-covered uniform, nodded slowly. I remember. By 1944, America was producing 96, 318 aircraft annually, nearly double Roosevelt's claimed goal. How do you explain this miscalculation? Goering stared at the documents for a long moment. His face, once flushed with arrogance, seemed grey and sunken. We underestimated the Americans, he said quietly. We saw their consumer culture and assumed they were soft. We saw their mass production and thought it meant lack of quality. We were wrong. Did this miscalculation cost Germany the war? Goering looked up. We lost the war in many ways, but yes, American industrial capacity was among them. We couldn't shoot down planes faster than they could build them. We couldn't train pilots faster than they could produce aircraft. It was mathematical impossibility. We were fighting a nation that could outproduce us 3-1 while eating ice cream and driving automobiles. There was no bitterness in his voice, just exhausted recognition. Hermann Goering committed suicide by cyanide capsule on October 15, 1946, hours before his scheduled execution. He was 53 years old. His death certificate listed the cause simply as suicide. There was no mention of the 159 aircraft that had proved him wrong. Today, Willow Run still stands, though most of it has been demolished. A small section remains as the Yankee Air Museum. Volunteers restore wartime aircraft there. They use modern tools, take weeks per restoration, and work with careful precision. Visitors walk through the museum and see a partially assembled B-24. They marvel at its complexity. How did they build these so quickly? They ask. The answer is visible in black and white photographs on the walls, photos of the assembly line stretching 1 mile, photos of women in work clothes holding pneumatic riveters, photos of completed bombers lined up wing to wing, ready for delivery. One photo shows Sarah Mitchell, though she isn't identified by name. She's reaching up to install a tail stabilizer, her safety goggles reflecting the flash of the camera. She looks 19, competent, and entirely ordinary. That was the point. In 2019, an economic historian named Dr. Patricia Chen published a paper titled Industrial Determinism in Total War, American Aircraft Production, 1940-1945. The paper analyzed productivity metrics, labor efficiency, and manufacturing innovation during the war. The conclusion: America's victory over Germany was inevitable the moment Roosevelt announced the 50-0 aircraft goal, not because of the number itself, but because of what it represented, the total mobilization of American industrial capacity toward a single objective. Goering laughed in May 1940. He didn't understand he was hearing his own defeat announced 3 years before it would become undeniable. The last American wartime aircraft factory closed in 1945. The workers returned to farms, offices, stores, and homes. They raised families. They paid mortgages. They lived ordinary lives. But for 820 days, they had transformed America into the greatest military production machine in human history. They had built 159 aircraft, tens of thousands of tanks, hundreds of thousands of trucks, and millions of tons of supplies. They had proven that industrial war wasn't won by superior soldiers or brilliant tactics. It was won by superior logistics, organized labor, and relentless production. Hermann Goering learned this lesson too late, from inside a prison cell, holding statistics that showed American women had outproduced the Third Reich's entire military-industrial complex. The factories are mostly gone now. Willow Run is a museum. Boeing still builds planes in Seattle, though using completely different methods. Ford makes cars again, not bombers. But the lesson remains: don't laugh at American industrial capacity. Don't underestimate American organizational efficiency. And don't mistake mass production for lack of quality. Goering made that mistake. He paid for it with his nation's survival. If this story revealed something you didn't know about World War II, hit that like button. These stories of industrial warfare matter as much as battlefield heroics. Subscribe to this channel to learn more about the forgotten heroes who won the war, not with guns but with wrenches, rivets, and relentless determination. Drop a comment and tell us, where are you watching from? Did your family work in wartime factories? Do you have a connection to this industrial miracle? We want to hear from you. Thank you for keeping these stories alive. Without your engagement, they disappear into history. These ordinary people, Sarah, Charles, the tens of thousands of workers whose names we'll never know, they saved the world. They deserve to be remembered. See you in the next video, where we'll explore another forgotten story from World War II.